What a beautiful Father's Day I got to have. I'm so grateful for my life and my wife and the things I get to experience. And man, did I get spoiled. I hope you all out there got to have a wonderful Father's Day as well. If this is your first time watching the channel, welcome. If you're returning, thank you. That's all I got to say about that. Well, this is where we're at today. Let me take and turn this hot mess upside down here. And that's literally what we had happen. Let's just say this isn't my first time at the rodeo seeing this exact problem that we've had here. This really isn't. So let's get ourselves squared up. Come here. Now, let's zoom on in here for a hot minute. Let me get myself a sharp, pointy instructional tool. As long as it's not a flat piece of phenolic. There's a tech that used to be out there and he'd tap the phenolic on a board as he was preaching on his soapbox. That ain't me. I'm not interested in preaching in any way, shape, or form. Okay, what we have here is our standard 1990s, early 2000 built 667 made by Texas Star, also known as Outcom, also known as, well, Ranger. It's got the beautiful, venerable Toshiba 2879s, non-red dots. These are 210, well, they were 210. We don't know what the current trading price of these transistors are anymore since RF Parts is now out. And they were as of Friday. I've yet to look this morning to see what we've got going on for a price. Let's see what's going on. RF Parts has done this quite a bit here lately. They run out and then they buy some more, so type in 2879 in the old confuser. Out of stock, out of stock, out of stock. Not trying to brag or nothing, but just saying, could be a fact. It could just be coincidence. That's the last set of matched 2. Last set of matched 2. That's a set of singles. That's a set of singles. And that's the last set of singles. And then they started listing them as out of stock. So I don't know. I'm not too excited about it though. We got lots of those parts over here. I'm just saying we don't know what the replacement cost of these are. And I'm not ready to say the sky is falling and RF Parts is completely out of them, but they've been telling us now for over a decade, hey, we're running pretty low, we can't get those anymore, we're having a hard time finding them. You guys might want to think of something else. Well, I think that day is around the corner. I'm not saying that day is today, because I have rung that bell once already in my life and said, they're out, they're out. And then a month later, they relist them as having them in their inventory. So as of this moment right today, RF Parts is out of 2879 Toshibas, which is fine. We've been expecting this. We have a very good viable replacement component. The HG works well, 1608. The 17Cs, I prototype tested those 4.5, 5 years ago. They showed a lot of promise. I haven't built anything with them yet. I have several of them here. But back on topic on hand, this beautiful mess. And that's what this old girl is. She's a hot mess. We're missing some parts. Like, let's start with our output transformer here on this 2-pil section. It is physically unsoldered from the board. We have these parts unsoldered. We're missing our whole combiner network. The tuner is still present, but our combiner network is missing. We have a little tiny small filtration cap that is over here. We have seen this happen before. There's usually only a couple things that cause that cap to go bad. First and most obvious thing is that the amp got hooked up backwards. We haven't ruled that out yet. The second thing that we've seen happen, and people act like it's a mystery when it is not. I see that cap and then I look at the whole picture. You see this black stuff here on the board? This is flux. That is flux that's actually was inside the solder. Not the stuff that bubbled up when they put the components in. This is the flux that's inside the solder joint itself. and as an end result of the box becoming incredibly hot, has boiled itself out, and has done it in such a violent fashion that it's bubbled up onto the lids. I've seen this going on decades. This is a normal thing. I'm not saying that your inside of your Texas Star should look like this. It should not. What I'm saying is that I've seen this enough to where I've become accustomed to seeing it, and I know what this is an indicator of. The next thing that I am very well aware of is, well, let me tell you another story. When I was in my 30s, early 30s, I'd totally forgotten about radio and moved on from it in my life completely. I went to our local CB shop one day. I was going through a divorce. My first wife, well, for lack of a better term, was a hoe. And there's nothing wrong with being a hoe. Girls got to eat, but when you get married, you got to settle down a little bit. Well, she never did, and ended up needing to get rid of that person. So she moved on, and one of the things that I wanted to go do, because I took like 6 months, worked on me, got my money straight, got my house right, I needed to find something to occupy my time other than chasing tail and drinking. So I got the harebrained idea that I would go into our local CB shop and say, hey man, you got an old beat up amplifier? Because I've always been about the amps more than the radios by far. So you got yourself an old beat up amp in here that you could sell me just for parts. I want to just try and work on something. So the guy that runs our local CB shop goes in the back, comes back out and hands me a Sweet 16. All the parts on the whole board of the Sweet 16 were down here in the corner in a big giant gelatinous nut of solder blobs. The guy had gotten it so hot, and he had the amp mounted like this. And all the parts fell off the board, fell to the corner, cooled down, and then proceeded to solidify themselves in a big giant nut in the corner of the cabinet. Well, I took it all apart, took the nut completely apart, pulled all the parts out, put everything back, repilled it, turned around, and was able to sell it. And that was me working 256 hours a week. I was responsible to that company for 200 hours a week at that time, fully on call 24/7, 365. So in my 50 something hours that I wasn't responsible to them per week, I'd put this together and did it, and I got a lot of pleasure out of it, seeing it work. And then of course I had to start there. So I had to go get, at the time, an antenna, a piece of coax, a radio, those kind of things. And I started over. And I came back to the radio through that means. But that's the norm. I've seen a lot of boxes like this get too hot and the parts fall off. And I think that's what happened here. Usually when the parts fall off at this gravity, the amp usually just shuts down and it falls down to the point where the consumer, the actual user, recognizes they have a problem. This particular amplifier was orientated like this. And so when it got hot, all of its parts fell down. And we can tell that by a couple little indicators. Let me show you what the indicators are. They're small details. Small details. The solder drips. There might have been a little bit of a cant to it, but the solder drips. Now these transistors, if I was to go to pull them out, they probably got gains in the teens. And that's because they've been so hot, the emitters and the collectors and the bases are starting to leak a little bit. It's the same thing here. We have straight down solder drips off the top of the output transformer. And that's where the swamping capacitor fell straight off the transformer. We have the same thing going on over here, right here, for where our output combiner attaches. It's a straight drip of solder. The details, you gotta look at the details. I just had to laugh. This weekend I read this thread. This guy started in this group on Facebook. BBI amplifiers, pros and cons, go, basically. And there was 130 something comments or something like that. And I thumbed through them all. I thought it was kind of ironic the guy that was talking the most garbage ended up actually trying to join BBI Amps on Facebook, BBI Video Gates. He also tried to join the Bakerman BBI group, and on top of that, he basically tried to join every group that there was with my name associated with it. But meanwhile, he's over in this other group just bashing the holy bejesus out of us. I thought that was kind of humorous myself. Just had to laugh, and my admins were very aware of what was going on all the way around, and they just patted the guy on the head and said, no thanks, we don't want you to play. Go be hateful some other place. We don't want you to spread it here. In that same thread, I read another quote, and I'm saying parentheses, air quote, another technician that says, if you try to ask him any technical questions, he becomes rude and disgruntled and doesn't want to deal with you. That's not the case, and anybody that's ever actually dealt with me on the phone knows that's not true. It's the details. I could sit here and talk for hours on how this works. Hours. And the little things that I know I can see that are in here that, like, I want to change this, all right? I'm going to change this too. And this thing needs a bath. They did the power wire upgrade, but they put it on the wrong side of the fuse. If you're going to put a fuse or a breaker on anything, you guys, electrically, the absolute safest way to do it is at the bateria, okay? Or at your source of generation. Some guys will just bypass the battery completely and go directly to the alternator. I don't suggest doing that whatsoever, but some guys will do that. And you want to use a breaker, not a fuse. Because when there's a problem, you want to be able to reset it. You know, I'm just saying, food for thought. But I just had to laugh. I read the whole thread and just moved on. So I'm a firm believer in there's no such thing as bad publicity. In the beginning, everybody hated my guts. Completely hated my guts. Hated the ground I walked on. I was scum of the earth because I was new and nobody knew anything about me, and it's always easier to hate somebody than it is to give them the opportunity to show you what they have going on. I was very much in the learning stage, just like I am today. Learn every day. You never can know it all. No one knows it all. Just there's no such thing. There's different gradients of knowledge, let's say. Let's put it like that. And in the beginning, didn't have as much knowledge in my head as I wanted to have, but I went out and I found it, and I put more in my head every day. So the guys hated me a ton, but the end result for that was I got all of this really interesting publicity, and it really hurt because a lot of the people that were hating me the most were the people I've helped the most, believe it or not. And you know, that got everybody's attention, so everybody came over here to the YouTube channel and dialed in to watch. And here we are today. It helped because everybody tuned in and watched and went, wow, this guy's actually trying, this guy actually cares, he actually wants to help, wants to make things better. And everybody tuned in, and then the next thing you know, everybody's calling me because they want me to do something, which has been great. It's been a blessing. So I just smile. I see those kind of things, and I see all the negativity, and I just smile, and the water just runs right off my back like a duck. Doesn't matter. I'm still here. I still got work to do, and because somebody on some obscure corner of the internet decides they want to say whatever they're going to say, 9 times out of 10 what comes out of it's a positive thing. And here we are today. Back to this little guy. What I want to do is I want to pull this relay cover off. I'm going to pull all the switches off. We're going to wash this thing first off. So we're going to disconnect our power wires. We're going to do an actual decent positive power wire upgrade. We're going to upgrade our ground wire going between A and B, even though it doesn't matter that much since the case, the heat sink, and the underlying metal mass of the heat sink and the pan and all that do most of the groundwork distribution. We want to beef up our power wire ground potential going from board A to board B. That'll help it run a little bit cooler because of a lack of current restriction. If we remove that lack of current restriction, then there's not as much heat to overcome. We'll pick up a little bit of efficiency. We're going to bypass this bottleneck and this bottleneck and go directly to the output transformers. But first I need to clean this, and Mr. Dave was cool enough to hook us up with this. Oh, can't forget the solder blob. Come on, solder blob. Solder blob. Solder blob. Solder blob. Attention to the details, as always. Please note the solder blob is flat on one side, so I can tell you exactly what happened. And by looking at the texture on the bottom side of the solder blob, got hot, fell against the lid. Solder blob, got hot, fell against the lid, this way, just like that. These are our output capacitors, Here's our final combiner network. And these are our 330s that go down by our transistors, right by the tabs. They got so hot they fell off. Now, to circle the wagon train back full circle, this is the remnants of the little tiny filtering cap that they put on the board. That's the outside case. Here's the inner guts right here. I used to see this and just automatically assume that the amp had been hooked up backwards. You see all the guts of the, this is all, the shmoo that's inside this can is actually kind of corrosive. And if I don't clean this out, it's going to eventually eat the board up. It might take 3-4 years, but the traces are going to become damaged. So it's easier for me just to go ahead and desolder the guts, the actual, see if you look, there's the wrapping is still in here, and then you have the electrodes that make contact inside the capacitor. What causes this, once again, in this particular application, is heat. The heat dries the cap out. The cap's got current potential pressing on it, which is an actual form of work. So there's current being pressed upon this cap on the positive and negative posts. The Magic Pixie shmoo that's on the inside of the thing, and I use the Magic Pixie shmoo term tongue-in-cheek, the dielectric that's inside, or the electric that's inside, dries out. The capacitor loses its ability to be able to resist the current flow potential, and you have yourself a firecracker as the dielectric properties on the inside of the capacitor break down, and it fails, and it causes it to pop. Now, there has been a few occasions over the years where we didn't have proper amount of blocking that was taking place. People got cute, they pulled this bar out, and they put a bigger bar in there, and then for some reason when the box fell out of balance, either it had a transistor fault, and we're talking specifically a 667 and the 250 and 350s. They'd have a transistor fail, box falls out of resonance, and all of a sudden this wire isn't the easiest path for the RF to flow off the transformer, and then they had reverse RF flow off the transformer up the positive rail, and pop. We've had that happen too. So, is what it is. We'll just simply replace the cap, because I have a feeling that this was caused from heat based off of all the other information that has been made present to us, because homeboy that sent us the amp was cool enough to send us all the parts, and we were able to play the world's greatest detective, just like trying to find a clitoris on a new chick that we've never been with before. We were able to figure out what was what we needed to flick with what body parts, and I think we're going to be able to make her go ooh. Okay, on that note, this needs to go to here, this needs to be bigger, this needs to go to here, and this little tiny piece of wire needs to be extended and go directly to here. That will help about 6-7%. I want to replace this wire because it's so prone for failure because of heat, once again, and we want to wash this thing. We want to resolder this transformer down. We want to resolder all the transistors all the way around all the legs of the transistors. We want to reattach our output capacitors, reattach our output combiner unit, reattach our 330 puffers to ground, and I appreciate you sending the solder droplets up to me. It's not absolutely necessary, but it sure made for a great visual, Dave. Okay, let's do work, less talk, more do. Agreed? Let's go. I think we got kind of lucky here. So I'm in the process of putting everything back on the board because I want to test it and see where we stand. This cap configuration is different. I haven't seen that. Okay, anyhow. So this guy is unsoldered, as we can all clearly see. And I just noticed that this guy is unsoldered, which is good. And let me explain to you why that's good. Because as this thing started to fail, we didn't have a lot of imbalance take place. And we know that also because we can look at our combiner. And our combiner isn't severely burnt. or discolored in any way. It just physically came off. So it got hot enough, I'm assuming it got hot enough, to where the transformers popped up off the board, and the guy reached down and he probably bumped it. And when he did that, there was enough input energy to make this thing disconnect and these parts fall off. But the positive source for the transformers came uncoupled from the board, uncoupled, fancy word, disconnected from the board. And hopefully, that stopped us from having catastrophic failure on the transistors, because the repair on this can be really expensive or really cheap. And we always we're hoping for really cheap, right? Right. Okay, I'm gonna set our transformers down, get the rest of the parts tacked back in this thing, and then we're gonna do a basic test run on it to verify the viability of the transistors. Reason why we have to do such simple things and not just go out and dump a bunch of time into doing full up mods on it is because I want to present my customer the most options that I can. It's simple. Okay, all your transistors are good. I'm going to go ahead and do all the mods. And I get to call them and say, okay, man, all your transistors tested good. You got lucky. Or I got to call them up and say, man, you got 2 dead pills in this sumbitch. What do you want to do? And then how far do we want to take it? So I got to present options. That's the way this works. Options. Let's go pursue options. Okay, 1,000 watt slug and peak, 1,000 in average, 5 watt slug and reverse on 12 volts. And let's see what we get. Got all the parts and pieces roughly back in place, enough to be able to test this thing, and we're not going to see optimum performance out of it, but we want to run it. So, amp off. Hello. There's our input power. Hello. 500 watts and 12 volts. Good stuff. So let's sit here and let's watch this thing run for a minute. Let's grab our digital image device, heat image device, our FLIR. Oh, about 15,000 phone calls this morning. It's already 2 o'clock in the afternoon. So, hello, 1, 2. A little bit of heating in the output combiner. Hello, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. These 2 transistors are heating up. Hello, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. These 2 transistors are heating up. These are all good signs. Preamp is working. Low, dial a watt. Dial a watt is working. Hello, 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 hello. Hello. 1, 2, 1, 2. That's working the way it should. That's working the way it should. Hello, 1, 2, 1, 2. Okay. We've got 4 very good viable transistors. Preamp's working. Everything's working the way it should. This power wire is off of somebody's motorcycle jump start cables right here. So I don't know what's underneath this mess, and I'm not going to find out. It feels like a couple butt splices. It's not really safe. This isn't safe. So we're going to replace our power wire, and we're going to do all of our upgrades to it now. Yay! I like me the upgrades. 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 Okay. Call a customer, give him the good news. Gotta be careful. The little tabs that are in there bend really, really easy. That's a varnish tool, or burnishing. It's a burnishing tool that's specifically made for cleaning relay contacts. Get them on Amazon, eBay, all over the place. Just a couple bucks. You get yourself in a bind, don't have one of those. Like I've always said, use a $1 bill. So we washed it, and it makes it look like a whole different amplifier on it, or doesn't it? So it changed filters. That's what it looked like with the old filter. I just got tired of looking at the yellow. Yellow gets to me after a while. I noticed this was kind of hanging out from underneath the board. This little washer. So I want to make sure to jiggle that out of there. We'll reach in here. I'll pull this out. It's more remnants of the cap. That thing looks really good. It cleaned up really well. I mean, as ucky and yucky as that was, I just reflowed all the transistors because you gotta have a little bit of flux. Okay, you've got to have, in the joint, you've got to have an X amount of tin, a little bit of lead in there too, but it helps to have a little bit of flux because it makes the joint softer. The more you cook the flux out, the harder and harder the joint gets. And after time, that can cause problems. Well, the vast amount of solder drips, the big solder drips came out of the center part of the box. Imagine that, right? Shocker. The tabs are just barely soldered in. So we went ahead and reflowed everything and reattached everything where it needs to be for the most part. And then we ran it. But if we wouldn't have reflowed the joints, this thing would have come back because it's going to get hot again. Now, this stuff here, this coax here is just the cheapest shit on earth. So we're going to replace this as the next step, and we're going to put probably 316DS here. But I just want to show you this thing cleaned up really well. It looks like new on the inside now. From all that brown speckled crap, looks like an ugly brown paper bag full of poop that somebody set on fire, to that. Just gotta be really careful, like with the switches, because they're made of this plastic that the wash that I use is incredibly aggressive, and it can, if you're not careful, melt the switches or melt the face, and then the switches won't work anymore. But we've got this down to a science. Anywho, moving forward. I'm standing here dicking with the settings on this camera trying to get this to come into focus. I'm like, man, it is sure dark. And then I pan up to the bird meters. The camera's exposure gain, because this thing is so shiny and pretty and clean on the inside, is getting dialed way back. Okay, so we changed out the power wires, added some grommets, gave it a mild power wire upgrade, polished the input tune so it's perfect, changed out the output and input coaxes, 316, so it can handle what it's going to do from now on. And this thing's done, man. It's all the lights on the front. Let me make sure everything works. I don't want to make no false statements here. Preamp light works, AM light works, sideband light works. Everything all works. I mean, it looks good, runs good. So let me show you what I mean. I fixed a box for a guy the other day, shot him a private video, and he actually got upset with me because I forgot to show the input tune. Man, the input tune on this, I think you intentionally did that. And I'm like, no, it just happened. It just happens. Shoot a million of these, every once in a while you might forget a step or two, but it all worked out for the better. Okay, so we got our 1000 water, 1000 an average bird, and then our reflect, 5 watts, of course, back from the bird, 10,000 watt dummy load. Okay. Hello, 1 2 1 2 1 2. Now we're up on. I bumped my voltage. I did. Come here. Whoop. Get up here. Get up. Get it. Touch it. Okay. On 14 volts. Hello. Turn the 667 on. Hello. 1 2 1 2. Hello 1 2. Okay. So we're on 14 volts. 1,000 in peak. 20 watts going into it. Hello. Hello 1 2. 1 2. Hello. All right. Let's go look at the input tune. It's a 5-watt slug in reverse between the 2950 and the amp. Hello, 1 2 1 2 1 2. Now please note, this is with a 1-watt carrier. So 1 whole watt, that's 1 whole watt, gets you about 190 watt carrier going out. Hello. So you're gonna want to keep your dead key low. Low, 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 low. Variable, we already shown all that. Preamp, we shown all of that. I think I crossed my I's and dotted all my T's the way I'm supposed to. I think I got all the bases covered. Man, that thing is bright. It's pretty, it's clean. And it's got, well, an undeterminate amount of transistors in it cost, because like I was saying in the very beginning of this thing, we have no idea what the cost of those transistors are now. Eventually it's going to come down to the cost is whatever the person that owns them determines their worth. It's not going to be set by RF Parts anymore. But like I said, I'm not ready to pull the cord on, oh my God, RF Parts is out, the sky is falling. We're not doing it. We're just not going to do it yet. Well, this one's done. It's heading home. I think the guy that sent this up here to get it repaired runs a CV shop, and I think this was a customer of his, and I think his customer is going to do something. I don't know. All I know is it's done. It's going home. The lid's going to have a BBI sticker on it here in just a hot second after I clean the lid, so I make sure the sticker sticks. And I'll even do the awesome favor of making sure it's got all new hardware in it, so it looks pretty as pretty can be. And I mean, I don't know if you decide you're going to flip this thing, you're only going to be into me. A couple $100 for repair. I'm sure you'll be able to flip it easy for $500-600. So it's a good deal. Everybody wins. Gentlemen, my name is BBI, and without a shadow of a doubt, I am the biggest mud duck in Idaho. Come check us out, www.bbiamps.com. And I just got off the phone with a guy not just even 5 minutes ago where he says, really, is that your actual phone number? I'm like, well, what number are you talking to me on? Yes, this is my actual number. If I can help you or answer a question, don't hesitate to call. No, I am currently not taking on any new work at this time. I'll be thinking about it in September. Now, before we part company, for you guys that actually watch my videos all the way to the end, we're going to do a little bit of plus bonus stuff. This is the 1.25" Heliax that I picked up from my station. This is a standard Andrews connection. It's a L6T DM-PS. What I'm looking for is an 1.25" to 1 5/8 flange reducer. So I can go directly from the coax to my line section without having to have an interim coupler. Okay? I'm turning that out to the radio community. No, they don't have it on Fleabay. I looked. If you know of a guy that's got the fitting, or you are the guy that's got the fitting, call me and I will open my wallet and I will proceed to pay you for this exact fitting that I need. I'm trying to eliminate this whole connection and make it so I can take my coax and go directly into my line section and then just have a bullet that sits in between the two. So give me a call. I'm looking for this. Very much looking for this, and it is smooth. It's not corrugated center. So keep that in mind, because there's two different kinds of 1.25" fittings. All right, on that note, I gotta run. Still looking for that Henry 8K, by the way, the mystical Henry 8K. If you got one of them, you want to make some money, you give me a call, I'll make you a deal. Okay, I'm done talking. You guys have a good night. Appreciate every single one of you guys. I'm gonna run. Next video is a mystery box. It's sitting over there in a corner. I haven't even opened it out of the cardboard yet. I'll see you, gentlemen.